Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to nearly our final, at least, lesson on the Merchant of Venice. So we're now using the Merchant of Venice as a way of looking at non-fiction and bringing together what we learned a couple of lessons ago on introduction writing. So to begin with, I'd like to look at this introduction from an article we're going to look at later on and identify within it the key points of a good introduction. So those, of course, are the name of the text and the writer, the character setting a theme that is going to be covered, describing the phrase, the focus of the essay, and the overall message of the playwright, poet, or author that we're looking at. So take a moment to read through this extract, pause the video, and then have a go yourself. Now you've had a go yourself, hopefully you've had to find some of those key component parts of a good introduction that we learnt about before. So just to show you what some of those might be, let's move the mouse over here, there we go. So in the different colours, I have colour coded them. So the name of the writer and the text is straight away, we have the Merchant of Venice, we talk about Shakespeare within the introduction. The character, the theme and the setting is really established when the writer says, with its celebrated and moving passages. So it's already telling us about the play as a whole. So mentioning that it's the parts of it are both celebratory and moving. So it's telling us already that there is an emotional aspect to this article. A describing phrase, so to extend that point, says to remains one of Shakespeare's most beautiful plays. So it describes it as a beautiful play. The focus of the essay, however, is clear where the writer says it also remains one of his most repulsive. So the perspective and the point of the essay that's going to follow has been left to the end of the opening two sentences to really provide it with an impact. So it tells us the focus whilst also leaving us with this idea of a contrast between that of repulsion and beauty. And the overall message of the playwright, poet, author is left really to Harold Bloom in his contribution to this essay, right to the second part, end of the second paragraph there, which says, real harm to the Jews for some 4 centuries now. So that's really the overall message according to the writer Harold Bloom. Now that isn't necessarily the writer of the article. The writer of this article incorporates many different perspectives in his writing with, to give us a broader understanding of different interpretations of the Merchant of Venice. So it's really important that we can split out in these examples of non-fiction writing the writer themselves perspectives and then the writer who they might have referenced in their perspective. Okay, so that's just teed that up in our introductory task. Okay, so I'm now going to give you a chance to read through this article. It's probably going to take you 25 minutes. It's quite a lengthy article, probably the equivalent of 2 sides of A4, with slightly challenging language, but nothing I don't think any of you are going to have real trouble with. But feel free to highlight, right click and search on Google for a definition of those words or a synonym within your internet browser. That will really help you understand any tricky words and therefore the context and the comprehension of the overall article. So take some time, have a read of this really interesting article, and then come back and we'll get to work on some things together. So now you've read through that, I think you'll get a greater understanding of how difficult it is as a teacher to talk about Merchant of Venice and keep it very, very much open to your interpretation and giving you the assets and the tools in which to make your own feelings and beliefs clear, but also to balance out lots of different perceptions and perspectives from the rest of academia. The way we're gonna tackle it though today is very much like the non-fiction side of things, very much like you would a English language exam, paper 2, section A, which is all about writers' perspectives. So the critical thinking needs to come into play here, where we start analysing someone else's writing for our own benefit. So to begin with, the typical question you would be given was, in this extract from the opening paragraph, can you find 4 things about blah? So we're going to do something very similar. I've taken out part of that article and put it here for you now. I'd like you to read through this and find 4 things you find out about performances of the Merchant of Venice in Nazi Germany. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Give yourself probably 3 or 4 minutes, see what you can find, and just write them down in your book, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 things, and once you come back to the video, I'll give you some answers. So read through, write down those 4 things you find out about those performances, and then unpause the video to see how well you did. Right, so it begins with establishing that the Merchant of Venice was a favourite of Nazi Germany, perhaps for obvious reasons, because that the belief that the play was anti-Semitic. But what we've learnt from this extract about those performances were obviously that it was a favourite of Nazi Germany. So that you can use as one of your answers. It seems quite obvious, but that's actually all we're looking for, is facts, information to be extracted from this extract. The performances were performed in 1933 and 1939. There were more than 50 productions, so those are actually 2 separate facts. You can use those. Certain elements had to be changed to suit the Nazi agenda. So, of course, there are parts of the play where they would have adapted it to suit their own beliefs. And lastly, a 5th one, just for in case you may have missed it. So the director planted extras in the audience to shout and whistle when Shylock appeared. So even though that's a quotation from somebody else's writing, in this case Kevin Madigan, Professor of Christian History at Harvard, it's actually okay to use, because although it's been quoted by someone else, it is still valid, even if that's an opinion. Okay, so that is how you answer really question 1. You've picked 4 things that you found out about. That's it, simple as. Okay, so we're moving on together. Next, we're looking at language. So then normally question 2 is an 8-mark question that asks you about language. So when we talk about language, you should already be thinking, well, that's word choices, that's perhaps phrases and figurative language. There's different ways in which the components parts of the English language are put together to create meaning. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is to look through this extract and identify ways in which the writer expresses and demonstrates his own views. It's not just about those he quotes, as much of this article is about him quoting other people's research, but how he explains what he believes. So I think you should take about 5 or 6 minutes to read through this and to make sure you really understand it, and start coming up with a few ways in which the writer has demonstrated their views through specifically choice of language. Once you had a go at that, unpause the video and you'll see how you get on. Right, so the first thing to draw on is the first sentence. Our writer here says, of course, Shylock hasn't always been played like a monster. So he could have used other phrases. So a villain could have been played in a merciless way, but particularly a monster. So something that suggests fantasy and almost impossibility, the idea that monsters don't exist. So why would they describe him as a monster? So that's quite interesting, that choice of word. Tells us something that's scary and dangerous and so on, but also perhaps fantastical. So that always suggests that perhaps this opinion, this view of Shylock being a negative or anti-Semitic or stereotypical character is perhaps not completely true. So there's little argument. It was initially written as a comic figure. Well, for a writer to say there's little argument, it was almost saying there is no point discussing this with me. The facts are clear. So it's not really opening up to any debate about this idea of Shylock as a comic character. So that's interesting, and especially because he uses one of the first Shakespearean editors and uses historic quotations and evidence rather than more modern interpretations. So that you could almost argue, well, because of the choice of source, that tells us a lot more about the author's perspectives, because that tells us this isn't open for debate in his mind. But I'm not going to dwell on that, because that's really something more around structure than it is around language. What I do want to focus on is where it says from this quotation, that the role of Shylock had been acted and received comedically. So reinforcing the idea of a comic character, just showing us that, again, we acted and received comedically. It's not just acted comedically and nobody got the jokes. So the idea of using those words specifically to repeat the concept of comedic performance, so acted and received comedically, also echoes what I said earlier as being a comic figure. Shylock was being portrayed sympathetically. So again, sympathy in our mind should be telling us that this is about emotions and feelings, and that's key, because it's not saying that he was being shown or portrayed in a way that was hard for people to understand, or in a way that they might have had perceptions about a Jewish person performing, but in a sympathetic way. So interestingly, this is being paraphrased from Nicholas Rowe's thoughts, but it's still relevant because it's been written in the writer in the Smithsonian Magazine's own words. He then goes back to a quote from Edmund Kean, Edmund Kean's performance, which describes him as willing to see in Shylock what no one but Shakespeare had seen, the tragedy of a man. So again, the idea of no one but Shakespeare, the set is very similar to Little Argument in the idea that it doesn't provoke questions, it doesn't invite you to disagree, it's telling you. So the choice of the words there is really saying this is not up for debate. It's a comedic character and it's tragic, but it's only been very less frequently presented as tragic. So that's quite important, the choice of words there. But then it goes on further. So I'll come on to that little paragraph in the middle, that sort of 2-sentence paragraph later. But next, again, I relate you back to the idea of where these quotations come from. So the quotations and the information that's being collated together here comes from a variety of sources, mainly from the United States. But the third paragraph in this extract begins by introducing the professor of Jewish studies at Dartmouth College. Now that tells us straight away that she may have a particular perspective on Shylock as a character, and because of her experience and expertise in Jewish studies. So the choice of commentator here is important, and the fact that the title is mentioned of Susanna Herschel's role. So that's very important for us to consider her statements. And drawing on her statements, the writer goes on to paraphrase again and uses the word perhaps twice and alleged. So dropping into our minds 3 times, alleged, perhaps, this sense of a doubt. So that a doubt as to what Shakespeare's motivations were and what had motivated him to write this specific character. So referencing a Christopher Marlowe play, referencing a political affair in terms of an intriguing attempt for of poisoning that the Queen's physician, so Queen Elizabeth I, was a Portuguese physician, and he allegedly procured some poison and attempted to poison her, and was subsequently executed. And these little stories, these anecdotes, start putting in our mind doubts about why would Shakespeare have done this, what was his motivation, which of course is the point of the whole paper and this lesson. And lastly, again, another phrase that really starts playing onto the idea of doubts and lack of preciseness is either hearsay or legend. So this refers, of course, to the fact that Jewish people were not allowed to live in England at the time, had not been allowed to live in England for 300 years. So whilst there may well have been some that lived in a much more sheltered life and hidden from public knowledge, it's very, very unlikely that Shakespeare would have actually met any Jewish people firsthand. So it would have come from hearsay or legend. So again, it just starts making our impression, perhaps, of the writer that he believes that Shakespeare's experience of Jewish people was fictional, that he had created this character based on a collection of different sources, none of which might have been that reliable. So hopefully that gives you an idea about how the writer is expressing their opinion. There's lots there to tackle, but what I'm looking for really here is the idea of doubt, the idea of making one thing very clear about he's definitely a comic character, and then kind of justifying or explaining why Shakespeare might have come up with a character that was subsequently seen to be quite anti-Semitic. So then when we look at that structure, there's 3 short paragraphs there, and the order of those things is often very important, and it's up to you to decide how important it is. So firstly, can you identify what is the key topic within each of those paragraphs? Have another look, see if you can come up with a sentence that describes the topic of each of those paragraphs, then unpause the video and see how you did. Right, well, the first one, it really, as we said, establishes this comic role of Shylock with some historical sources to give it credence. The idea that if it's a historical source, it must be more valid than modern, perhaps, or at least because the source is much closer to Shakespeare's time than perhaps today, we might infer that that is more believable. But the first paragraph simply establishes the comic role of Shylock using historical sources. The second paragraph, the much shorter one, poses the question to the audience. So it's really important that it then suddenly undermines, if you like, or contradicts the statement from before. So it says, but just what exactly did Shakespeare see in the character? So whilst it's suggesting that it's not making a suggestion that we disagree with the idea of Shylock as a comic character, it is asking what Shakespeare's motivation was. So then it kind of begins to lead us towards the answer of, was Shakespeare being anti-Semitic, or was he merely exploring anti-Semitism? So it's interesting to see what will happen next. And this way of writing, of posing questions to the reader, encourages them to continue reading to try and find the answer. So the third paragraph starts to use more expert opinion, certainly more modern expert opinion, but does create a sense of doubt in our minds about Shakespeare's motivation. So the idea perhaps of this writer is to tell us that there is a lack of clarity about Shakespeare's motivation, and certainly wants us to believe that is open to interpretation. So overall, the writer is maintaining a belief that any interpretation of the play is going to be inconclusive, and we should keep an open mind about what Shakespeare's intentions really were. So then we're looking at the final task. And the final task, I'd like you to go through the article as a whole and identify anything that tells us about the author's opinions, specifically on The Merchant of Venice as a play. So I want you to look at the source of different quotations. Where are the sources coming from? What order have they been presented in? Sometimes it's very important which order these different sources come in, because we take away really our first impressions and our last impressions. And in the middle, those things may get lost. So it's important that we think, why have they been structured in this way? And what type of phrases does the author actually write as opposed to quote from others? So what does he actually write, and what words does he use? What's the overall message of the author as well? What impression do you get having read the article as a whole now in terms of his specific opinion? Is it clear? If it's unclear, can you explain why it's unclear? And finally, the other thing I want you to consider in your answer for this task is, how important is the final paragraph? So this article concludes by stating, indeed, a Jewish villain turns out to deserve our sympathy. His Christian opponents turn out to deserve our skepticism. And the play which tells their story turns out to be more complicated than we originally assumed. So how important is it that is, as a ending paragraph, that's meant to be our final message? So what does that tell us about the author's opinions? Finally, for those of you who are aiming for 8 and 9, our stretch task is to explain how far you agree with this statement. Though it's true that Shakespeare's mockery, however blatant one finds it, of the play's Christians doesn't erase its prejudice. So does the mockery of Christians within the play outweigh the prejudice it has of the Jewish characters? Right, that is our final task. I'd like you to complete that in your books and then take a photograph and upload it onto Google Classroom. I've been trying to give you feedback as much as I can, so obviously any spelling errors, any kind of oversights I can come back to you on. But hopefully that is nearly the end of our the Merchant of Venice sequence of work. Thank you for sticking with it, and I hope you've enjoyed it as a play. There's going to be another couple of lessons left this week, and we'll go on to those, and I won't tell you about them too much yet because I don't want you to get too excited about what's happening next. So thank you for today, and hopefully see you again soon.